Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of my wellness series. I'm Maggie Mesa, and I'm bringing you intro to vagabonding and a virtual hike through Bryce Canyon today. I'm recording this on a Tuesday afternoon. It's a little bit of an interesting time politically right now. We're right in the middle of the Black Lives Matter George Floyd protests. So I am going to go ahead and pre-record this and can it, and then once it is a good time to be able to play it, I will put it on out there. This is an adventure that I got to go on over the weekend, and then everything that we are working through culturally right now, which is obviously extremely important, much more so than the content that I might necessarily be creating. So I am making sure that I am deprioritizing anything that I am saying, but at the same time keeping myself consistent to my own schedule just to stay in a routine as well. So thank you for joining in. I think that this will be a really enjoyable and fun conversation that I'll get to bring everybody on, as well as I appreciate your patience, understanding, and discretion in knowing how and why I am trying to create and publicize it the way that I am. So with that said, I do think that this subject is awesome because it's something that I really care about and for me has been really transformative. One of the things that I've always really wanted to do was get into the place that I could professionally create and discuss the adventures that I get to go on and have a lifestyle where I am in some ways super mobile, a little bit transient, and able to hop out of the city on a really short notice and spend a couple days camping or living out of my car or doing all of those good things. And while I go on and make these, like the really cool content and the neat stories that I am, people are always asking, how is this possible? How do you make money? How are you here one day, there the next day? And so the answer to that is really big, but I'm condensing it into an intro conversation. I'll go over a little bit of how I started and what my life was like when I first kind of hit the road, and then where it is now that I can do something like just say goodbye Salt Lake and head down to Bryce for a trail run in the afternoon while still running my consulting service and being the badass producer that I am the rest of the time. So let's get started with my first slide, and that is my adventure live stream. As you know, I'm Maggie Mesa Art and Yoga, and this is Intro to Vagabond and Virtual Hike Bryce Canyon. As usual, just a quick thank you to all the creatives that made this possible and everybody in my life that supports me. Joey is here running the audio as always. The slides are still my friend Jonathan Hare's, and everybody else that has really believed in me so that I can create the life that is feasible for this. A background into how I got started into vagabonding now. First of all, I want to make sure that people understand that I was really adventurous and outdoorsy for a long time, my entire life, honestly. I just kind of took weird sidetracks into higher education, and because of circumstances and situations, wasn't always able to integrate into wilderness the way that I wanted to. But having the type of life where I could do blogging or be outside as much as I wanted to and incorporate that into my life was always a goal. So when I really did start to make the decisions necessary to accomplish that, in some ways, some people that didn't know me very well thought that it was startling, and in other ways, it really was something that was deeply rooted in me. Now it's become kind of trendy to have the outdoor bloggy lifestyle, and it is accessible for a lot of reasons, but it was also something that I truly wanted and admired way before I was able to jump on it. So just understand that it was a calling to me before it became popular at the same time. With that said, it is popular for good reasons, so I'm also not trying to dog on, trying to do like the too cool for school, I promise. So with Pitbull Bucket List, and I will bring you some slides on that, what started with that was I'd come out of a couple of different really tough times in my life. It was after moving back to Salt Lake from being on the East Coast and coming out of a tough relationship, and that was ended once I found out that my pup had been diagnosed with cancer, and I had this really weird, a little bit like, not break with reality, but this understanding very deeply that this dog that I had in many ways considered my higher power was dying, and my life, I did not want her to die seeing me live the life that I was living at that time. And I became very deeply committed and boldly adamant that my behaviors and a lot of the fundamental aspects of who I was going to change so that she wouldn't die seeing a mom that she wasn't proud of. And I felt that very deeply. So I started on this Pitbull Bucket List adventure. I basically, without knowing it in some ways, I broke up with my boyfriend, moved out, and was able to buy this $400 car from a random neighbor that I really lucked into. And it was an old SUV. If we want to switch over to the slides, I can show this one. It was a 1998 RAV4 SUV. It wasn't very big. My pupper was able to sleep in the back of it perfectly with me. If I stretched out from my hands all the way to my feet, I could touch the top of the windshield to the back one, but it fit me perfectly. And I knew the opportunity that I had available to myself after not having a car for a really long time. Not because of anything DUI-ish, but just finances and logistics. I had this tool that was going to be able to get me places. And based on my old relationship, I'd been really confined and controlled. And if you know my personality right now, it's really big and really adventurous. So like me sitting in a condo for 2 years was not good for anybody. And I just wanted to get out. And so I got access to this car. I didn't want my pup to die in the situation that she was in. And I just had this explosive desire for freedom. So I pulled out the back seats of it and I built in a platform. And for better or worse, I told a lot of people that I didn't want to be around them anymore, and I left Salt Lake. And this is the announcement post saying that I was going to go on my merry way. And one of the slides that I did want to talk about with just warnings is, for me, I was very dedicated and very trusting in who I was and that this was going to work out well for me long term. But it was an alarming decision, and there was a lot of people in my life that did like a, whoa, what's going on? And especially considering the instability I was facing, like there was probably just cause for them to be able to do that. Understand contextually where I was, though. I didn't have kids. I had a job that was flexible. I was trying to already build towards the entrepreneurialism. So in many ways it was alarming, but it was a little bit less so than one who's been married for 5 years being like, I'm quitting everything and I'm going. So contextualize that understanding a little bit. And this is the first picture as I left Salt Lake. I had a wagon on the back of the truck so that pup could be pulled around if she wasn't able to walk anymore. And then we went down to Green River, and this is the first setup that we had. You can see my little bed built out into the back. I had all of my things underneath it or on the rack. I had a comfy little chair, and she had her set up, and I was so happy. It was the first time that I was able to really go to sleep and wake up in silence and comfort and know that I wasn't around anyone that was gonna say anything mean or hurt me. And the infinite joy that I found in the ability to wake up in the morning calmly and quietly was so overwhelmingly beneficial and beautiful in a very deep way that has made me love mornings ever since, that I genuinely like didn't realize that I was homeless during this period of time. So people said this to me afterwards, and I was just like, yeah, we're going. So another overall consideration to think about with this is that I, again, was able to acquiesce this, and I have a financial job that, for better or worse, and it got worse for a little bit, I was still able to monetize and make money while I was on the road. So just, bear in mind while I talk about like how wonderful this is in some ways. After I got to Green River, and this is a good picture in Green River of the two of us together, I pulled up a map of my overall course, and this is not all of it. It forced me to stop. It wouldn't give me any more stop options to add in. So once I got to Bishop on the map, I went all through Nevada also. So here we started in Salt Lake and then dropped down over to Green River, back up to Arco, down up to Salmon, up to Missoula, all the way up to Hot Springs. And Hot Springs is outside of Glacier. And I probably would have gone up into Canada if my passport wasn't expired, which I found out like 3 days before I was about to go into Canada, and I still haven't gotten that renewed. Then I jumped back down to Salt Lake City, headed down to Kanab, down into the Mojave, to Ventura, where I spent ultimately a couple years of that as my home base. But the next leg after Ventura and waiting there a little bit was up into Bishop, and then when I would have to go back to Salt Lake at any point in time, I would usually drive through Bishop, Tonopah, over to Salt Lake, and I've done a lot of weird shenanigans in the deserts through Nevada, including some street art projects and just good stuff like that. So this is my overall comfort zone in here. Sadly, I haven't done that much Pacific Northwest, and I would love to do that, but like, this is my happy place right in here. I spend a lot of time circling through that. So back over to the Instagram shenanigans. Hot Springs is a really cool area. This is about as north as I got in a little town up in there. There's ones from Salmon. And just a lot of different activities and stops along the way. So let me pull up a good one that I can just have as a background, or we can even switch back to me and then go back to the slides for a second. Hi. So the next slide that I have that I want to go through is just the setup and things that you should think about when you are starting to work remotely or to live on the road. Other consideration, and this was a good one. Please note that I'm saying intro to vagabonding and not gypsy or anything that could have cultural significance to it. I'm obviously a white girl with no affiliations other than muddy European genetics. So Gypsy has a lot of cultural references to it, and it gets used a lot in road trip scenarios, and it shouldn't. Vagabonding is a term that I have coined a little bit. It does exist otherwise, but just as someone who travels and is geographic, not dependent, and I would still consider myself vagabondy, even though I pay rent in and have for a few years now one specific location, just because I'm able to pack up and move so quickly. So like there's a reason that I'm terming that the way that I am. Anyways, with the vehicle, so as you know, I bought Amy, and I named her Amy after Amy Winehouse. Because I was relating to the difficulties that Amy Winehouse has gone through, and then the car kind of became my girl. Many people have super expensive, like the big vans that are totally outfitted, and those are great, and you can do like Etsy-worthy rehabs. I also got her done for $400. So don't think that because you don't have a Sprinter Mercedes vehicle that's like yay high and like however expensive that like you can't hit the road yet. It's very few people that are able to actually fit those out the way they are. They usually have other jobs and they're usually like in Hollywood or something like annoyingly pretentious. So I mean, with exceptions to that. Another thing that you do really need to think about with anything on the road, though, especially if you're trying to make money while you're doing it, is your Wi-Fi access. You can go through data so much faster than you ever think until you are trying to actually do work in an RV shop, not RV shop, yeah, in the shops. COAs, Campgrounds of America, usually have free Wi-Fi that you can utilize. And different places that you can stay might give you access or not, but know wherever you're staying if you do need Wi-Fi or if you do not, and understand that city Wi-Fi is always different than country Wi-Fi for whatever reason. You can have full bars if you're in the middle of nowhere, and you might think that it's the same, but it will not upload a video, and it works differently. I don't know why. But always know that if you're doing anything on the road, it's going to be harder than if you were at your desk in a city for any reason. You also need to have power sources and energy sources. If you're using your battery from your car to do that, if you're doing it from solar power regeneration, if you have a campground that has a hookup, these are all like different ways to work around it. But you don't necessarily know how fast you'll deplete your laptop battery until you are depending on it for everything. Sleeping, cooking, and showering are pretty much like the three basic necessities of life. So knowing how you are going to navigate those is also critically important. If you were sleeping in your car, if you were sleeping in a tent, if you're sleeping in a pop-up above, if it's an RV, they're all different. There's a lot of different ways to handle it. A lot of the time I would sleep in my car, but I would also really get excited if I could find a super cheap Airbnb that I could crash in for like 3 or 4 days and get into a routine of really working and having a place over my head. I would go back and forth pretty much 50-50 with staying in the car or being in an Airbnb or COA or hostel or something like that. Cooking and showering, if you are camping, then you can use your fire. If fires aren't allowed, you need to have a jet boil or something to that extent. If you're in an Airbnb, you can use those cooking facilities. Again, multiple answers to the same problem, but it can be a grumpy situation when you're really tired, you don't know where you're staying, and you haven't thought through how you're eating also. And then showering. I have and still do love my white trash spa days, which is when I will go to a campground and I'll take all of my favorite like shower stuff and I'll basically like do a full like self-care day by a campfire and a picnic table. And I can figure out how to shave my legs, deep condition my hair, do whatever other girly stuff that I need to, like buy a tent. And I love it because it's just like a funny alternative way to really like take care of yourself. But again, you want to make sure that somehow in there you're working showers or hygiene in. And again, you don't necessarily think about that until all of a sudden you're in your tent and you're like, wait, when was the last time I actually washed my hair? So those are the considerations. And then also with anything intro to Vagabondy, you want to make sure that you are documenting all of it. And as they say, content is queen. If you are not documenting it because it's not important for you to do that, that's fine. But in most cases, if you're living on the road, it is because you are somehow associated with the content creation market. You are a photographer, you are an advertiser, you are an influencer, you are a creator, you are in somehow way, shape, or form monetizing or not capitalizing, but highlighting your experience for others. So knowing how to document that, the tools that you're going to use for that, your Wi-Fi again, the equipment, and like using necessary hashtags, having a time and a way and a place that you're posting are all like big enough considerations to warrant their own slides on that. Then the other thing that you're going to want to get into is just the basic logistics of anything vagabondy. And that breaks down into how you're making money if you're doing it full-time versus part-time. If you are, what your overall schedule is like, what your operations are to handle that, safety concerns, and communications and postings again. So full-time versus part-time, again, one of the things that I really tried for the first 6 or 9 months was to really be on the road and to do it full-time. And I made it work. I also realized the benefits of having a cheap but stable full-time basis. And I found that in Ventura, and now I found that here. In both places I've paid relatively low, and I have a roommate, and most cases that's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. But overall, it allows me to keep my overhead really small so that I can put a lot of money towards my adventures. Schedule, I learned really quickly that I work best, and I learned this on the road, and I still keep to this to the day, that I work best in the morning, and I wake up, I have coffee, and then I am on my computer from 8 to 12, almost no negotiation, and that's on the road or not. One thing that I really have utilized to make that work well for me is coffee shops and libraries. When I'm at home, I have my desktop set up, but when I'm on the road, I'll wake up at 5 or 6 so I can make coffee, do my thing, have a little bit of yoga, and then I am on my computer in between 8 to 12, and I am working. I am emailing clients, I am writing posts, I'm doing whatever I'm doing, but I am capitalizing on those early morning hours when my mind is at its best, and then usually by the afternoon, I can either just be low-key, take care of myself, or go for an adventure. If I'm actually doing an adventure day, I will do that as its own day usually, but the rest of the time I will keep to that morning schedule, which again will usually mean that when I'm on the road, I will try to do it for a few nights in the same place just so that I know that I can wake up in the morning and really get to it regularly. Making money on the road is hard. It is something that I've really perfected and worked very hard towards. I consult, I do marketing and publicity. Now I have the art sales. I didn't have that then. And I have a lot more credibility because I've been much more successful on a lot of projects since then. I was only about a year into my consulting when I really started this then. So I was probably living off of, at one point, $150 a week max, and I'm not exaggerating. It could have been lower than that. $600 a month sounds high for a couple of those months. But now, I still talk openly about the fact that I'm building up my financial reserves, but I'm at least able to do it a little bit more comfortably. And as I continue on my strategy, I will make more in advertising and sponsorships, so that'll just get better and better. But being able to do what I do, or have this a little handful of clients that are okay with me being on the road consulting them, or having Patreon the way that I do now, are really strategic and very well thought out mechanisms for me to monetize myself that I've worked for very, very hard. So when people are like, oh, how do you make money as a blogger? How do you make money on the road? That's a good question. I will help you as much as I can. But you have to have something that allows you to be location flexible and communication independent. There's also a really high counter side to anything that I do, though, where I can get off a trail and have a million messages all of a sudden that I have to respond to be able to keep my clients so that I can make the money that I do. So there's definitely pros and cons. But the pro is that I get to run around and be in Bryce when I want to, and we are getting to that soon. With the long-time considerations of anything vagabondy being noted, that you do get road wear, you just get tired, your equipment gets tired, your mind gets tired. I think driving is one of the best things you can do to process trauma. I swear that there's something with the visual stimulation coming at you, and music, and just the ability to let your head kind of low-key think about things. It literally lowers the loops that your mind might get on. So I think that's great, but there are times that I am now very grateful that I have the home and my little room that I know I can go back to and have a night's sleep where the roof isn't going to leak or blow away and my house doesn't move. So another consideration is family. I'll get into what my goal is. And I think that that would be a way that I would be able to either date or even have a kiddo on the road long term. But a lot of people have like much more stabilized family structures and they wouldn't be able to do this. Or it's a weird way of life if you're trying to traditionally date people. I remember I talked to a guy in Ventura once who was a good dude, and he just looked at me and was like, why, like, I live here. Why do you think that I would want to be investing in someone who isn't going to be here 3/4 of the month? And I was kind of like, oh, good point, dude. And then I realized at that point that anyone that I dated would really need to be able to be on the road with me or super flexible to that schedule, and that I was eliminating a lot of other possibilities for my life because of these decisions that I made. And for me, they're totally worth it, but just another long-term thing to think about if you really want to be a vagabond. And it does either get expensive or not expensive. It can cost more to live on the road or it can cost less. You're not paying rent sometimes, but you're paying day rates. You're camping, but your food goes bad. You don't have to pay for your landlord repairs per se or anything that might happen like on a house front, but you pop a tire and you're in a bad way. And you have to have a career that's going to flex with it or have to be understanding that like whatever the professional implications are with that. I know a lot of people that wouldn't be able to just take off on a Thursday and clearly can't leave for 9 months without jeopardizing a major income stream. So what my goal is now from everything that I've learned, and I've said this a few different times, is that I want multiple small like hip camp type stuff across the West in the like loop that I've made before that I love to be in. And what I want from that is to be able to have a vehicle that I can go in between all of the cool locations that I love, and then be able to rent out wherever I'm staying the rest of the time. So I'm monetizing those places and would be able to pop in between them, keep making the content, build my brands the way that I am. And maybe this is a pipe dream, maybe it's not. I think I can do it with a family. Who knows? And who knows like what the world is planning on that one. But nonetheless, that's where we're going with it. And we just did a little camera click out, which is perfect because it means that I am halfway through on the timing and I am halfway through on my content also.
Bring your mic to the front of you and start that one.
Yeah.
Just start getting some
Hair action? Oh no, I've got a lot of that. Okay,
There you go.
there we go. Okay, so moving from part 1 of Intro to Vagabonding into part 2 of the virtual hike itself. And if you want, you can always go through any of my Instagram. We're probably good to pop into the overall slides here too. You can go through my Instagram. This is a picture that I took on a bison refuge up in Montana by Glacier. That's a cute little buffalo up there. I love this picture just because I look like happy and I'm away from all the Salt Lake stuff. I don't know what like the meaning of life is, but things here were good. And all of this were just kind of like shenanigans on the way. And it's really well documented. You can use hashtag Pitbull bucket list for a lot of it, although once I didn't have her with me anymore, also I stopped using that quite so often too. And another cool thing that I did, and this is very particular to me, is I started creating all of like the art portraits during the same time. And that was another thing that people were like rolling their eyes over initially. And I was like, no guys, this is cool and I'm gonna keep doing it. So I was able to really combine those two types of content with all my outdoor stuff and my consulting, which has created an Instagram that's like very specific and very unique and very defined to me. But I was really able to like pull this together where I'm like shooting nudes and I'm on the road and I'm doing consulting, and it's very specific to me, but again, like just be understanding of the context of that. And I'm not necessarily endorsing like run out into the middle of the desert and get naked with a random photographer and take pictures. There could be consequences to that action. But if you want to look at all of it, it's here on my Instagram. It's really cool. And I'm totally always happy to talk about it. Moving into Bryce stuff. So here is what I packed to actually go on the adventure. I was able to wake up on a Thursday morning and know that I only had one meeting that afternoon, nothing the next day, like set in stone. And I just really wanted to run. I just literally run. Like I just wanted to like get out of where I was. There's been tension going on in some parts of my life, and just having a little bit of detachment sounded like a great idea. So my friends have a place down in central Utah, and I had a lot of different considerations for where I was going to go. One of the little slides that I have is the virtual hike selecting. I was deciding between Notch Peak, Pfeiffer Horn and Sundial, Flaming Gorge, and Bryce. And one of the things to think about when you're selecting an adventure is overall weather and the operational side of where you're going, how much it's going to cost, and how far away it is. Notch Peak, it was going to hit 100 degrees, and it's in West Desert, which is just going to be brutal. Fife and Sundial, weirdly enough, had higher avalanche risks and were still with snow, which was making them more technical. I was recommended to Flaming Gorge, but I'd never been there, and I wouldn't be able to stay for free. And I did have one call Thursday evening. So I would have gone into a motel, and a motel is fine. I actually like staying in motels, but it's expensive. And so then I settled on Bryce, which is a beautiful national park that's a little bit less traveled in between here to, in between Salt Lake to Wildland Gardens, and then Bryce is a little bit after. So I was able to get from Salt Lake to Wildlands in 3 hours, and then Wildland to Bryce, which is an hour and a half. So it took a 5-hour trip and broke it up, and it just ended up working out perfectly. So this is the back of my car. I've got all of my computer stuff. I've got some bedding stuff. I've got a bag of clothes, and I've got a bag of like toiletries and miscellaneous. I did stop at Walmart once I got in because I needed an air mattress, some cereal, an air mattress blower upper, batteries. I grabbed some cherries, which I didn't realize how expensive those were. Those were $9 fucking cherries right there, and half of them weren't great. So $4.50 gold. Like I hope every one that I ate, I knew it was costing 75 cents worth of deliciousness, and they were good for the ones that weren't bad. And then a salad. So, and oat milk, because who am I without my oat milk? Here's a cute little selfie in my Farmer John overalls, which were comfy. And then this is me in the morning after doing some consulting on my way out. So I actually was able, and I still keep to the schedule as much as I can, that I wake up in the morning, I make my coffee, I do my meditation, I do a little bit of like serenity, check-in, gratitude type stuff. And I sat down, I did 2 different calls that morning, I did a lot of work, and then I got changed, took a picture of the dog that was capitalizing on his parents being out of town and sleeping on the couch. And then I headed out and away from Wildland Gardens through the town of Joseph and up 89. 89 is actually one of my favorite drives of all. I think it's really underrated, and it's this little patch in between 70 into either Kanab or Bryce, Zion, and Grand Canyon. So heading up this little road, you follow a river, it's really pretty, and there's just this moment of like serenity that every time I drive it. It's also not the first time that I do that. A lot of my trips end up being cyclical, and that gives me comfort because I know them enough to know like, okay, that's where the good gas station is, etc. So it's not my first time on 89 at all. But it was the first time that I got to stop at Butch Cassidy's childhood home. Butch Cassidy was a notorious bank robber and shenaniganer. He also had his sidekick, the Sundance Kid, And he had multiple love affairs that were salacious and interesting, one of which actually went to my high school that I'm not a super fan of, but she was from Salt Lake, and then they got married, and then she might have repurposed herself. But I found her picture in the old archives, actually, at one point. And she was known for her beauty and adventurous nature. And she kind of became a little bit of my muse at some point. And they probably all died together, but that's like shrouded in mystery. There's a reference to the fact that, if you can see it, it says, has more lives than a dozen cats. And ubiquitousness is more than a match for his multitudinous lives. People were always saying that he was dying or that he was robbing a different bank. So this is his childhood home. He was raised Mormon, obviously in the middle of Utah. And there was this cute little girl that was there that was like curious about why I was taking pictures and like shadowed me the whole time. By the end was like, I want to be a blogger. But I love this picture because it's like a little bit haunting, and it shows her face right next to this like old dress that was left over, I guess. I don't know. There were 13 kids in this little old house of theirs. So here is a video that shows how little and old of the house. I have no idea if all of them actually slept in there or not, but it's not huge. There is, and I think that I showed it, I think that I pull up and show it at the top. There is a little attic as well, so it's possible that they just like popped all of the kiddos in there. Yeah, we're getting to it. There we go. Popped all of the kiddos up there, who knows. And then here is the grounds as well. As you can tell, it's not huge, but it is neat. And this is pretty stereotypical scenery for '89, which again, it's just super comforting for me to drive, and I just have so much fun. After you get through the Butch Cassidy, you go through a couple more little towns, and then you turn left and you're into Scenic Byway area. This is the road that is going to start to get you into Bryce specifically. At this point, you're going to Bryce. You're not going to Zions or Kanab anymore. You are definitely on your way there. And this is just like the first couple turns of the drive where you're starting to see the Red Rocks for the first time, and just knowing that you're about to get to really cool places like here. So this was me taking a selfie by myself, just on a thingy. And then two really nice older gentlemen came up and asked if I would like them to take a picture. And the one assured me that he was a tour guide and could take good pictures, so he got this one for me. And the funny side story to this is he takes my phone and he tells me to go take the picture, and he says, "Can you do a come hither look? Give me your best come hither look." And I couldn't not laugh because I wasn't going to be like, dude, I know all about the come hither looks. You really, really don't want me to give you the best come hither look. So I was just like, Bryce. I'm like totally cracking up to myself. But he literally was like telling me like multiple times to give him come hither. Anyway, so that's the Bryce sign. And then this is when I am at the trailhead and about to go into the hike itself. One thing that I do want to touch on is inspiration versus destruction and new policies as they go with geotagging. I was asked by a friend very specifically not to talk about the actual name of this hike. And then that was followed up by the fact that while this hike worked really well for me for a lot of reasons, it was a mileage that I really liked. It was a location that was easy for me to attain. This one specifically is a lesser known one, and people enjoy it for being not quite so traveled. So when that's the instance and it's not immediately recognizable like something like Timpanogos, then I am going to try as hard as possible to not give precise geographic information about it and to just say that this is a hike overall in Bryce. If you're my super good friend and you want to know more, just DM me. Otherwise, do your own research and pick what's best for you. Take your own ability, take what you want to see, take what you know. And All Trails is a really good tool for determining that. And I'm totally happy to help you or anyone else make decisions on what would feel good for you. So after I got to the top of the hike, I started in on it, and this is one of the very first moments of you can really see how specific this geography is and how vast it is as well from this video. I got to go to a national park about this time last year, where it was in California, and it was like the newest national park, and it's super small, and it was made by Obama, and I think there must have been something political behind it because it wasn't that awesome. I mean, any national park is great, but it wasn't that awesome. And we got to the top of the hill. That was like the penultimate hike of it, and there was like one hoodoo. These are called hoodoos, and there was like one of them, and then everyone was like taking pictures by it, and I was like, "But have you been to Bryce?" Like these are like the stereotypical Bryce pictures where you're just like, "Wow." They're really, even Moab has a little bit of a different geography to it, as does Goblin. They're all similar and they're red rocky, but Bryce is just Bryce. Another funny story, it again is less traveled, but there's still people on it-ish. And like, I'm totally open about the fact that I'm smoking weed and sometimes microdosing. I did that before. And so I'm like trail running and I'm going down and I'm getting better at trail running. So I'm going really fast and it's downhill. And I like literally had this moment of just like happy, like running with my arms out. And I was like, it's so beautiful. And I like go around a turn and there's definitely this family. And I'm just like, wow, all the way down. And they were like not expecting a flying Maggie to come at them. But you know, if that's the worst thing that happens in life, we're doing just fine. Dead tree photography. It's very important whenever you're hike to always take pictures of dead trees. You just have to do it. And this one isn't even dead. It was just cool. Another just impressive picture. I use Strava for all of my trail running apps. There's a whole like Strava thing to it. I couldn't get it to say the miles that I was on, so I kind of had to stop every once in a while. But this is a really cool video, and then I switched the orientation on it, but I love it, and it's just very desert-y. I think that's a crow. But it's just bird and blue background, and then you start to see the expanse of the geography coming in. This is about 2 or 3 miles into the hike. And just how big and cool. And one of the things that I like about Bryce specifically too is you just feel the vastness of it. As well as contrasting colors. I love this picture, and I don't fancy myself a photographer per se, but I definitely do know good content from bad content, and I'm able to get a large amount of reasonably good content for stuff like this. And I just think that like storm versus the gold of the desert is just like, it makes my heart sing. So stop to get those, and then this is a good one where you can see the trail kind of weaving in and out through this expanse. This is the end of the hike. If you know where I am, you definitely know where I am now. If you don't, then you don't. But they call this the bridge because of these areas. Apparently, this specific hike, actually, you can loop it, and I didn't know that considering. So I just out and backed it, but you can loop it. Micro pictures of pretty desert flowers. Desert is so neat because at first it looks so monotone in some ways, and then if you really start to pay attention to the tiny, you see just this like cornucopia of rainbow images of palette colors, and it's just beautiful little portion of trail in between two sections of like a divide of divides of areas. And another one. So this was a little like mini trail section, and as you can tell, like the trail kind of drops off on both sides. And my hat actually blew off the first time that I was running it and went down one of the little side scree areas. It's not scree, but it's pretty steep. And I was worried that it was going to blow away, and then it stopped. It actually got caught up on a rock, and I went down for it. But I had a moment of like, oh no, am I going to be able to get back up because it's so loose? And I'm pretty adventurous and strong, so I was able to do it. But I actually did have a second of, I'm going to have to go all the way back down, get back to the trail, and then hike this back up again. And I don't know exactly where the trail is, and like, this is how people die. But if I don't have a moment of this is how people die on every hike I'm on, then I'm not doing it right, according to me. And I'm also hiking single and solo, which for me is pretty good. I really love this time. And then this is when I'm off of it, just taking a couple selfies by myself. That's my trail information. Again, if you're on Strava, feel free to join me. I like to do the Strava thing as much as possible. And this was just a little Instagram video from before I took off to pop down into the trail itself. One thing that did happen as soon as I got off the trail is I had my phone on silent and I turned it back on. And for whatever reason, literally every client wanted to get a hold of me Friday afternoon. My clients are all very aware of my lifestyle. They know that I am super responsive as soon as I can be, but that there might be periods of time that I don't write back for a couple hours. So I've trained them well with that. At the same time, I did have reception, so I texted everybody back. One of them wanted to have a call right away. One of them wanted to have a call the next morning. The one that wanted to have a call right away, I hopped on, and I sat in my car and watched the thunderstorm roll in and talked about the next live streams that I was going to set up for the client. It's Michael the Mayor. And it was those moments of like, this is how I'm making money. And I also get to be sitting off of this amazing hike that I just got off of. But by the time I got off that call, it's then 7 p.m. I'm working at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. And the other call was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning, and I had to take that. So as I said, it's the pros and cons of road life. I get to set my own schedule, and then I have to be accommodating to my clients that if they need me and they need me to work, then I'm working on a Friday morning, or on a Saturday morning. One of the things that I forgot to do was bring an extra set of change of clothes, and everything that I had on was super sweaty at that point. So I stopped at a gas station and bought my cool little westerny shirt that has hair on it now. That I get to wear today, so that's where my Bryce Canyon t-shirt comes in. I have a long history of collecting really ridiculous t-shirts. I'm a big fan of anything outdoor wildlife-y with some good like hippie type montages in the background. So I've got some wolf ones, I've got some eagle ones. You can usually find me in some type of a booty short, boots, and ridiculous t-shirt on my day-to-day life. So when I got back, this was the setup of my tent from the morning before. It's just an REI tent. I bought a cheap little twin air mattress. Those break and blow up super easily. If you are actually camping and backpacking, then weight and REI air mattresses are something to think about. If I'm tent camping, then I want something kind of comfortable and reasonably cheap because they're going to get holes or burns or whatever. And it was car camping, so I was able to bring a couple nice pillows and my nice blanket. And as I said in my caption, all I needed was a mint. It was a pretty nice little setup for myself there. And then I was on my friend's farmstead camping, so they have a little Airbnb bathroom that I popped in that night to take a cute little selfie and a shower. And that's me before I go to bed, except I didn't actually go to bed. Since I was on their farmstead, I was connected to their Wi-Fi and I really wanted to watch the next episode of Dead to Me. So I popped my phone on the charger and fell asleep to Netflix, which I'm calling myself out on for the ridiculousness of it. But also, like, life is good when you are sleeping under the stars and watching Netflix at the same time. So here's back in the morning at Wildland Gardens. That's me waking up. I was a little bit cold in the night. That's the tent that I was in, and these are the facilities. Some opium flowers, poppies, which is the opium plant, flower of transition of death. That's the tattoo that I have on my hip. And then this is me pulling in for the evening into my little tent spot. So it's almost nighttime at this point. It's almost 10 p.m. By the time I got back. So, but those are all of my slides from that. And then this is the map of where I went from Salt Lake down to Richfield, and Wildland Gardens is right here. And then from Wildland Gardens down to Bryce. You will notice that there are other ways to get there that don't necessarily involve going down 89. If you're going down 15, you could pop over on 70. That's right by where Wildland Gardens is. I will always take 50 and the more low-key roads to get there because I just like to be off the 15 as soon as possible. But if you're going to Bryce itself, you don't have to go on that 89 route. You can pop over too. So having a place like Wildland Gardens is really helpful for me because I was able to do it in 2 different spots and kind of get back and forth. But that's the ultimate traveling that I went. And it was about $100 in gas by the time. No, not 100. Gas is cheaper right now, but at least about $50 in gas to get down and back. So switching back to my slides just to make sure I got all of those done. Good. So last things with the virtual hike is to consider about Bryce. It's one of the big 5, which was an advertising campaign for Salt Lake or for Utah, highlighting their 5 national parks. It was a very effective advertising campaign, possibly too so if you ask some people, because now they are really packed. So if you are going on anything that is Bryce, Moab, Bryce National Park, Arches National Park, Zions National Park, what are the 2 others? Canyonlands.
What did you say?
Bryce,
Arches, Canyonlands,
Zions,
Zion.
Grand Canyon.
No, that's not Utah. We're missing a very simple one.
There's one more. I'll get back to you on that. It's the big 5. But anyway, it does create its own advertising. So anything that you think want to visit, especially during COVID, be aware of crowds, restrictions in capacities. What? Capitol Reef, yeah. Restrictions in visitation policies and just how you feel about large amounts of people. And I know that that is even more relevant today than it's ever been because these ones, I don't know if they're how it will react to COVID specifically, but these are the national parks that you really will get like busloads of tourists who can be rude and not understand social distancing. Granted, before social distancing was a thing, but when at least common boundaries were a thing. So Bryce is a little bit off the beaten path in some ways and not in others. So it is easy to get to and it's a little bit less traveled, but it's there. And then the cost is $35 if you get into the park. I was able to avoid actually having to go into the park for this time. If you're gonna really be doing vagabondy stuff or national parks make you really happy, there is the National Park Pass and it pays off pretty quickly. I think it's like $100 or something. But I think day pass is only a day pass at the $35 rate. So if you were even going to be there for 3 days or doing anything like road trippy through Utah where you're going to multiple ones, it probably pays off to get the National Park Pass pretty quickly. And then you get like a cool little book and you can do stamp things. This is my stamp hand motion apparently. So Bryce itself, all the beautiful things, I just talked you through that. My stats are in there, but it's about an 8-mile hike, and I did elevation things. That is pretty much everything that I can think to get through on Bryce. I hope that everything that I talked about with Intro to Vagabonding makes sense, and if you are interested in creating the type of lifestyle that I am so fortunate to get to be enabled in my day-to-day life now, that you would think about any of the information that I gave you, or to contact me if you have any more questions about it. And I hope that the virtual hike, even though I'm not giving like this is how you go on this one information, it still inspires you to choose your own adventure and to make sure that what you're doing is ethical in its treatment of the outdoors, but also purposeful to your soul. So there are infinite ways that you can get outside and enjoy what is really the beauty of the world and the earth that we are so lucky to get to be a part of and created into. When I say infinite, I really do mean that, but consider kind of the applications and the strategies that I've applied onto it, and maybe the operational aspects or the how-tos that I've gone over as well. Know that I'm always here as a resource. You're welcome to DM or reach out to me and contact me if I can be helpful in any way. Upcoming segments that we have are, this will put me about halfway through on the first commitment of the wellness series. My guess is that these just keep going for forever and ever at this point. I am going to take some of the content that I've created with the latest live streams that are on the Black Lives Matter movements, and I'm not going to do promotion around those, but I'm going to just put them into like an episode format of 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 of everything that I'm capturing, so that they have a place to live. And then this will go after that as episode 6. And then the next ones that will continue after that are going to be interweaving adventures with interviews, understanding that right now everybody's schedule and life are chaotic. There's a lot of conversations that I want to have with a lot of people that have given me initial agreements. Tying down all of the schedules as well as my own bandwidth has been really fluctuating lately. We also have 2 more episodes of marketing meetings. Those are going to continue as well, not necessarily every single Monday or at a strict Monday time, but as skill-based needs arise, I will make those into an episode and pop them up so that anybody can watch and learn from me in the consulting aspects that I've grown really skilled in and really want to make sure that I'm paying forward. And then both of those will continue to interweave. So I'll pretty much always, I think, continue creating the marketing meetings as well as the adventure streams and wellness updates. So look forward to that. Plus, specifically, I get to go rafting this weekend. I'm really excited about that. I love anything whitewater. So we're gonna make sure to get tons of content during that and then come back and have an episode directed towards that. I do have the fundraiser, which makes all of this production possible. Thank you for any contributions into that. Again, I really try to make these meaningful and purposeful for anybody that's consuming them. So anything that goes into there mainly goes to the people that help make this possible, not that much to me. So if you want to continue to support creatives, definitely think about that. You can always Venmo, PayPal, or support my Patreon as well. So that is all of the good things that I have planned for you today. I'm happy about the fact that it looks like we're going just barely over an hour, which is like right where I want to keep these episodes. Keep them entertaining, get you a lot of good information, and leave you to your imagination and your own inspiration. So for everybody that's watching this, thank you so much for knowing that I always provide you with a lot of different types of content. I'm doing everything right now from going down to Bryce to shooting nude sets to running on the front lines of all of the protests and making sure that I am doing everything that I can to support or create content that either highlights or just creates space for the stories that needs to be had today. So if you follow me and you enjoy me for any of these reasons, you know that I have not necessarily conflicting, but differing and various interests that I'm kind of trying to always make sure I am integrating into my feed. Outdoors is one of the most important things. It is the connection to my spiritual being itself, and having the opportunity to make these hour-long streams is exactly why I started to do the Vagabondy way back when. So that was about 3 years ago now. It's so neat that it's coming full circle. I'm really, really excited about where I'm going to be June 2021. I think that everything is just going like this, and it'll be really cool to know how that plays out from here. So thank you for being a part of my story. I can't wait to continue to take you on as my world expands and improves day by day by day, and I want to make sure that I am giving that opportunity to anybody else that might need it. So know that I care about everyone that's watching this. I genuinely love you, and I wish nothing but the best. Take care.